Let's link up with Krista on the Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
My name is Dianna, and I'm a Pilates instructor and a strength instructor as well, or a private trainer. And why you should be listening to what I have to say is that with my clients, the type of workouts that I give them is you could do them anywhere, whether it's the comfort of your home. That's like what I really first started with. I was never in a big box gym. I always made sure that people could work out with the comfort of their home with what they're dealing with. And what I like to stress a lot is that whether you're taking my class or training with me, it's more about just feeling good while you're working out, not so much like the number on the scale or I don't know, all those different type of fitness situations that people get themselves into. So just as long as you're just feeling good while you're working out, that's what my main thing that I always like to get across in my classes or while I'm training.
Love it. And before we get into more of that and more specifically your own fitness journey and how you've kind of gotten to where you are today, Dianna, I'd love to know what your go-to coffee order is. What do you like to sip on in the morning?
So I usually make it at home a lot,
Okay,
and
nice.
no matter what type it is, I'm pretty boring. It's just coffee with almond milk,
Love
and then
me
if
some almond
I
milk.
and I live in Long Beach, and there's a lot of local coffee spots. So if anything, then I'll go there, and I'll just again get just like their iced coffee with almond milk. But I'm not a big like Starbucks or Dunkin' girl. I like finding like local coffee spots wherever I
Nice.
go.
Love that. Me too.
Yeah.
All for supporting local. And I feel like their coffee's just so much better anyway. And it's
Yeah,
cool
it
when you
just
could walk
tastes
in somewhere,
better.
they know you, they know your order.
Exactly.
For sure. Well, cool. Let's jump right in. So, obviously, a big message for you is really finding fitness for enjoyment, right?
Mhm.
And usually, a lot of the time, it can take people a little while to come to that realization. And it usually comes with maybe struggling or getting into some sort of rut with their fitness, whatever it is. So, I'd love to first start with your story and introduction into the fitness world and kind of how you got here. And then we can move into what you're doing currently with your clients, your virtual offering, what your classes look like, because I know you have a pretty unique type of style with your mix of Pilates and strength. So, I definitely want to make
Mhm.
sure we talk about that as well and how you really developed it. But first, just kind of walk us through what got you into the fitness scene.
So I always was an athlete growing up. My two main sports were field hockey and softball, but I tried like a little bit of everything: swimming,
Cool.
basketball, volleyball, whatever, all that. And so while I was playing sports, I was also going to the gym at like a pretty young age, like I don't know, eighth grade and on. And so I was always active growing up and all that. And then I went to school for public relations and marketing. And when I graduated, I ended up working in the city and more of the corporate world. And I couldn't find a job in public relations, but I found a job in social media management, which now is a job that people know a little bit more. But
For sure.
then it was about like 2013 or
Yeah. So,
2012 I got
Instagram
the
was so
job.
new.
Yeah, Instagram like just came out probably like my first year and a half being at the job. So I worked there for about 3 years, but while I was there, I just was getting this gut feeling that this isn't my long-term career or plan going forward. I mean, it was great because it taught me so much about the social media and the marketing side and ways to work with brands and, contest ideas and stuff like that. But I just knew the 9 to 5 sitting at a desk and doing this was not for me. So at the time, SoulCycle was one of the main boutique fitness studios, and I was going there a lot. And once I realized that the instructors and the managers and front desk people, like it could become a full-time job, it just kind of got like my wheels turning. I live on Long Island, so I was commuting into the city at the time. So I just kind of like researched like all of the boutique studios on Long Island. And eventually I found Pure Barre that was hiring in Manhasset. So I actually started as a front desk. I interviewed with them, got hired as just a front desk girl. And I was like, you know what? maybe a little crazy to leave my full-time job with this college degree
Mhm.
and go back to a part-time job and figure it out. Like I would like nanny before and after work. I would bartend on the weekends. Um, so definitely had this like entrepreneurial spirit, I feel like right from the start. So yeah, I became a desk girl there and then worked my way up to become an instructor. And as I started becoming an instructor, then I started studying for my personal training. Then I became certified in Legree and started teaching at SLT. So from
Cool.
that position of my bar instructor, that kind of led me to what else I wanted to do. Like when I left, I was kind of like, I want to teach fitness, but I'm not sure what yet. But once I took Pure Barre, I was like, oh my God, I would love to teach this. And then I was going to classes at the gym and I was like, I would love to do some type of like, I don't know, higher energy class. And then I found the Legree method. And within the time, now it's going to be about 7 years come October that I left my other job and stayed in fitness. But I've taught like HIIT classes, I've taught row, I've taught strength classes. But now I'm still in like my bread and butter of Pilates, bar, and then I privately strength train clients as well.
Well, we have the Pure Barre story in common. I don't think I shared that with you when we
Oh
first
yeah, you can tell me
connected.
that.
Yeah, so before I would call that like my first like official industry fitness job because I did teach group fitness classes in college. And I
Okay.
count that towards my experience. I taught Pilates, which is Pilates and kickboxing. But from there, it was the same kind of thing. Side hustle, I was working in finance. I was taking tons of Pure Barre classes and decided I wanted to teach. So that was my first foray into boutique fitness in kind of dipping my toe in the water before I took it full time too. And, you know, it's
Mhm.
interesting. I think that I would love your take on this because you've taught so many different types of classes at all different studios. I think between Pure Barre and Pilates, especially Pure Barre, they're so specific in their training about sticking to the exact script and making
Mhm.
sure that you use their terminology. It's stressful when you're first learning
Yes.
how to teach there. I have memories coming back to me of like sitting with flashcards on my couch and like
Oh yeah.
saying it over and over and over again. Like my boyfriend at the time probably wanted to kill me, but it was the
Yeah.
only way I can memorize it. And while that sounded like so much extra work outside of the studio at the time, I think it's really helped me in having a better ability to use the right cues as succinctly as possible when explaining any kind of workout to somebody, whether that's strength training, Pilates, spin, whatever it is. So I'd love your opinion on that. Like in looking back on the jumps that you've made throughout your fitness career so far, how much would you kind of credit that training to the way you teach today?
I think the fact that Pure Barre was my first training, I think I would be a totally different instructor if I didn't have that
Sure.
training first because w- I never taught anything before Pure Barre, but I took the classes a lot. So I was hearing the
Mhm.
vocabulary a lot. I understood the flow of class. But when I went to training and it was like, this is the way it's structured, this is how you pick it. You either have to count the music or count the reps. You have to remember when you change
And
the
if
lights
you
and get
miss
the
it,
mat.
you're off. Yeah,
Oh,
like you
yes,
can't
yes.
recover.
And, like, the clients I take every day, like, they know if you
They
kinda
know.
mess up, but you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, no, don't worry, I'm good." But then,
Yeah.
like, when you change the lights, when you take the mats out, then remember to say a name, remember to do hands-on corrections, and there's certain, like, lingo you can and cannot say, so that was my first time going into it, and I kind of feel like, I didn't have any other experience,
Mhm.
so I kind of got a really intense one from the
Oh,
start,
yeah. You got thrown
and
right in.
say if I was somewhere else where I was be able to if I was somewhere else where it was just like, "Yeah, teach what you want," and then I went to Pure Barre, it would have been like, "Oh, I'm so not used to this." But the fact that right away that was the training, that's on my foundation for everywhere I teach. Like my own class that I recently launched during like this whole COVID time, it's to the beat of the music. I'm very specific with my sequencing, like it's no BS. Like so I think that's definitely made my foundation for my way as I teach, whether it's my own thing or other classes as well. Because then when I started training at SLT on Legree, it's the same thing. Like
Yeah,
you
I
have to
was gonna
really,
say, I'm sure it's very I dabbled in a little Pilates certifications in the past few months, and, like, it's
mhm.
really specific too.
Yeah, like you have
Even
to
to the
remember
brand,
your
like, Lagree is
timer.
one thing, yeah.
Yeah, like your timer again, what springs you're doing, making sure you're fitting it in the 45 or 50 minutes of class. And Pilates is, I'm not going to say like everyone should get Pilates trained, but like the anatomy portion of it that I learned was amazing. I did it with Linda Farrell, and I'll sometimes even do reviews with her because there's something I could always learn again about some muscle or just like a refresh. So even, and I've gotten that feedback before, like your cueing is so specific, like exactly where my knees stacked over my ankle, or my foot should be here, my toes point this way. So yeah, definitely between my bar and my Pilates training, it shaped me right from the beginning. And I owe a lot to that too.
Yeah, I totally identify with that, and definitely wanted to ask your perspective, because you usually don't find, to kind of segue into some more of the strength training piece, you don't honestly find between clients and instructors somebody who has that mix, right? And for me personally, one of the reasons why I kind of moved away from Pure Barre was, one, definitely because of the demand of what you were doing in preparation outside of the studio versus, say,
I totally
a
get
typical
that.
like boot camp kind of class, right? And it was hard to balance that with a full-time job, and it took me a little while, as did you, to kind of like fully make the switch into fitness full time. And, I don't often see people who are really into strength training, but will also take a Pure Barre class, in the sense that, like, I'll go throw like 250 pounds on my deadlift and then also walk into the Pure Barre studio and then focus on these super tiny micro movements with tucking. So I'd love to know, like, what kind of what led you to transition into the strength training piece? Did it kind of come from your sports background? And what did that look like for you in evolving in your career to more of what you now do today?
So yes, my whole background of lifting definitely was from my athlete background growing up. Like during softball, I went to a hitting coach. I went to the gym in between my practices, or like the days I didn't have practices, or the seasons I wasn't in season. So I was always like a quote unquote gym rat, I would say. Like that was my first bread and butter. And then when I started working in the city, I started seeing this trainer on Long Island. It's called Acceleration Sports Training out in Deer Park. And they completely changed the way I started lifting, because I would do the typical go on the elliptical for 30 minutes, or like until I hit 400 calories, and then like do my abs and like do some arms. And then sometimes at the gym for like an hour and a half, or I was just there for whatever time. And I just did that every day, but I wasn't seeing like myself get stronger. I wasn't really thinking so much that sense, like, let me get a six pack, but I just wanted to get like stronger. And I
Sure.
didn't see that coming
The
through.
results based on the time put in.
Yeah. And then when I started seeing them, they would walk me through a warm up. And then it was really, they truly taught me how to lift, like sets, reps, how you're blocking out your days. So I started doing that. But still was taking like classes at the gym and whatnot. I was a big spin person. So a lot of those like sweaty type classes. And then I don't know, just when I took Pure Barre, my legs were shaking uncontrollably. When I started taking Pilates, it was like so
They're
hard to
very
me.
humbling,
Very
right?
humbling. Like when people come to Core and Co, where I teach Legree, they're like, this is so much harder than I thought, because you just think like, oh, I could lift 200 pounds. I could totally do this, but just every workout's different. And that's why I think it's so great to cross train. Like Pilates is good for literally anybody. Like a lot of famous athletes do Pilates on the side as well, because it's good to really open up your hips, get that flexibility, get that core
A lot
stabilization,
easier on your
balance.
joints. Yeah.
Yes. So I was already like more of the gym person, and then I found it, and I'm the type that I can't just do the same workout every single day. So I like the whole mixing up, and I've seen results from it, and it's worked for me. And I will encourage my clients, like if people at bars say to me, something about my arms or my legs, I encourage them to also go and strength train or lift. But I think with Pilates in the misconception and bar in the misconception, it's always, I'm going to bulk up. I'm going to get bigger. Like they're afraid to lift those heavier weights because they're only working with 2 or 3 pound weights. And I mean, don't get me wrong, those are 2 or 3 pounds get heavy. And if
Oh,
that's
they
what
feel
you
so
like,
heavy by like the first
yeah.
minute of the arm series or
I
something like
know.
that.
We also have fives. When people grab the fives, I'm like, okay. But then I'll go and lift super heavy. It just,
Sure.
every workout's different. But if someone's going to be happy with doing Pilates or bar every single day, by all means do it. But I think for longevity and, your bones and muscles as we get older, you should be working in strength training with other low impact workouts as well.
Absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
talk to me about your signature class. So, how you kind of obviously COVID pushed you to go online, but
Mhm.
at what point were you like, okay, I have all of this experience from being in all these different studios, not just as a teacher, but also as a consumer and class
Mhm.
taker, that you kind of realized, like, I want to put this all together in some way and make my own spin on this?
So yes, when COVID happened, the two studios were working with, they decided to go online. And then I got some people asking me like, could we do a class with me and a couple of my friends and this and that? And I right away knew I wanted it to be a Pilates mat, but I didn't want people coming in thinking it's like a classical Pilates mat. So
Sure.
as I promote it or market it, it's a combination of classical Pilates styles, dynamic movements, and strength exercises. So it kind of combines a little bit of everything I've learned and done, and it's to the beat of the music. But that being said, like if the beat's ever too fast, I always tell people, like go at your own pace. But I wanted people to know I love the Pilates foundation, like the anything with the spine, the core, warming up the body in different um, sections. So I'll usually start with some type of stretch. We'll get into the core, but like I'll make sure to warm up like the upper spine, lower spine, then pull it all together. And then we'll get into like right leg, left leg, obliques, arms, a lot of spinal articulation, a lot of heart opening. And the reason I call it Pilates Strength is because I also add in some strength movements. So whether it's a wood chop, maybe a half get up, broad jumps with a back pedal. So like you're most of the time it's a low impact, but I usually do have like one or two jumping moves. But again, if you don't want to do the jumping, you don't have to. So I always make sure it has that strength component so you understand like you're getting your heart rate up. This is not just like, BS Pilates class or something where it's just like, yeah, I'm stretching the whole time or I don't feel it. Like I am dripping sweat when I teach it. And same thing like when my clients take it as well. Um, and then it's all to the beat of the music as well, which comes from my bar background. So definitely market it in a sense that it's going to be challenging, working all the major muscle groups. And I do it about 2 times a week, sometimes even 3. So if it's something that I'm doing and I know it makes me feel better, I'm hoping that my clients feel that way as well.
And tell me more a little bit about, just combining all of those disciplines together. You've been at this for several months now, and I imagine that you have clients who have been with you since the very beginning. So, what kinds of changes have they seen in their physique? And then just in terms of the feedback from the programming that you're putting together, like what are you hearing from them?
So, yes, it's not so much that the classroom moves get easier, but they start to understand it more so they can push themselves more in the moves that they're doing. Lots of balance and coordination has improved, and also core strength and core stabilization. I Within my classes, a big thing is I'm not going to have you hold a plank for like 2 minutes and do like jump squats for a minute and burpees for a minute, because I just don't think that's smart. Like the way I'm transitioning and the way that I'm programming my classes is literally thought from that first move to that last move. Like, what are we stretching out that we literally worked? Like, I'm not just throwing it together and hoping it makes sense and just getting you sweaty. Like, sometimes I'll even just do body weight and, maybe we just go a little bit more restorative or something like that. But a lot of my clients, it's super challenging for them. It's so funny. Like after I finish the Zoom and they're like, oh my God, that was so hard. Or like, oh my God, I'm sweating so much, even after we only use like a body weight type class, because I think it just kind of surprises you because you're so used to Pilates maybe not being as hard or being a little bit more calm. And I definitely amp it up. Um, but yeah, definitely that they understand the moves more. And sometimes even because I'm not like recreating the wheel,
Right.
I'm doing what I have known and loved. But sometimes I'll get inspiration or I'll combine two moves. So maybe we'll do it one week and then a few weeks later we do it and they'll remember like, oh yeah, we did that last week and I couldn't even get my heels up off the ground, but now I'm getting them higher and I'm balanced and I know that I could stay here longer. So they're also progressing and feeling better as they're doing it as well.
And I love what you said about the fact that you're not reinventing the wheel, in the sense that, like, at the end of the day, like, nobody owns a burpee, nobody owns a plank. Yes, you can have your spin on it, your personality. But with that, I'd love to know, obviously, that your inspiration is coming from all these different the diversity of the background that you have in taking all these classes and teaching them. But what's kind of your process in putting a class together? Like, tell us from maybe more of the instructor lens. Like, what are you thinking about? If anybody's listening to this and maybe they want to become an instructor, they want to be a better instructor, kind of, I feel like everyone has a slightly different method to their madness. So I'd love the inside take on what yours is.
I'm always thinking week to week, there's always a focus within that class or within that week. So I'll use different props, and I only use about like 2 props per class, but
Okay.
maybe one week it's light weights in a band. Next week it's ankle weights and sliders. Like I try not, I mean, I always love just like body weight and light weights as well. But I try to mix that up week to week. And then I always have a focus of a move I want to try. Not so much like a body part I want to work, because like I said, I literally work full body. Like we'll go outer glute, glute max, obliques, rectus, abdominis, like literally we'll work every single muscle group. But I kind of think of like a move that I want to base it around. So like this week I was doing a slider lunge burpee type style. So like you move down into a lunge, put your hands down, you step your foot back, come in, stand tall. So from that move with the slider, then I like to think, okay, how can I easily transition from that move to the next, but layer on working those muscle groups so we're burning the muscle out and it's minimal transition time. That's another thing, because I try to keep it 45 to 50 minutes max with the stretch and warm up.
Okay.
So transitions are very particular to me, and again, just what I kind of want to like flow in this week. Recently there were 2 different abs moves that I want to do for the obliques that I had never done before. So I always first pick the move and then I shape the class around that. And I also think of the type of equipment, like ankle weights are not great for every single move, because sometimes if I'm doing a lot of moves with your legs up, it pulls on the hip flexors. Like it's better to just do body weight. So again, it's not something that I do work under pressure very well. Like sometimes I'll wake up that morning and plan it. I'm going to be totally honest. And other times I write it days before, because I'm just like, oh my God, this is, I got it. It's got to go down paper now. But that's how I've always worked. And even in studio, that's how I work too. Like when I write my routine on the machine, it's always like, what is this one move I want to do this week? And I base it around that. But also importantly, when I'm doing that move, I'm making sure that my clients have worked up to be able to do that move. Like say if I get a new client, a new private Pilates client or something, I'm not going to have her do like, say a type level 3 move. I'm going to make sure that we start with the basis, like a bridge, a squat, making sure she's good there, and then work our way up. So the clients are progressing, and I mean, I know that they know it, but like secretly sometimes they don't even realize, like, hey, you were just doing this lunge and now you're doing a lunge burpee, and then we'll hold this plank afterwards. So you're progressing them without
Yeah, they
them
just kind
even
of think it's
realizing
magic
sometimes.
that it all worked together, whereas we were very pointed in how we got from one thing to the next. And I think that definitely comes from the Pure Barre, and most certainly the Pilates training too, because I felt like in doing a Pilates certification and going through all their workshops, like even just the way my programming that I participated in for my cert, the way it was structured and broken down, like not only by machine, but like only focusing on like X movements. And it was like maybe 10 max. And then at the end, we would always be asked, like, put this together in some kind of flow for a class that really makes sense. That's a lot like yoga, honestly, if I could give it another comparison.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the way that I felt when I was doing this or coming up with this idea was just, I wanted to make sure, like, if it's something that I'm constantly teaching and I'm promoting and marketing, I need to fully enjoy this every time I teach it. Because when I'm teaching virtually, I'm doing a lot of the workout. Like, I'll pop in, encourage people, always be sending out cues, but I'm doing a lot of it. So I knew it needed to be to the beat of the music. I know I needed to throw in like a little bit of jumping, whether it's just like jumping jacks or something at some point within the workout. and I wanted it to be challenging. I wanted people to feel like after they did this, like, wow, I don't need to go and do another workout. Sometimes you take a class and you're like, I could totally go do
Mhm.
another or something like that. Like I want people to feel spent, but feel good as well.
Totally. Now,
Yeah.
I know obviously for a while it was all virtual and you really went all in on that and you were virtual for all of the types of classes you were teaching, not just your own,
Hmm.
but now you're back in studio
Hmm.
and I imagine you have a pretty crazy schedule. So I think
Yes.
I love asking other fitness instructors, how do you stay motivated? How do you, between teaching and, like I'll teach classes and if I do 2 in a row, like my step count is like crazy for the day. My neat is amazing and
Hmm.
through the roof. And I always use that as an opportunity to remind my clients, like, hey, this counts for something and more than you realize. But
Oh, totally.
how do you stay motivated in terms of structuring your weekly workouts outside of obviously you're getting your workouts in and participating and sharing these classes with your clients? But beyond that, what are you kind of doing to keep you going on the days when you feel like it'd be a lot easier to skip your workout?
With my workouts throughout the week, I pretty much know the days I'm going to work and the days I'm going to rest. I will say summer, just like, I don't know, I feel like most of my clients feel too, it gets hard to keep up with
Oh,
it because
totally.
you're away or, it's beautiful out. Someone wants to get dinner. Like, it just, you got it. Sometimes your plan just go out the window, but I at least work out 4 times a week, sometimes 5. But for the most part, I always take at least 2 days off a week. And my main days that I work out, just kind of set in stone. And I know those days, like this morning, I teach in a heated room. So I'm teaching and sweating for like an hour. And then I'll usually stay and take a class afterwards. And then I know my days that I lift. I know the days that I do my virtuals. And just like I'm plugging in my classes and my clients, I'm plugging in my own workout. And I leave my day, my I leave myself 2 days of rest because I know I need those 2 days off. Like, I work on the weekends as well, so after I'm done teaching my Saturday morning classes, I usually don't work out then. And Sunday, it's always up in the air, like, maybe I'm gonna go to a class, maybe I'm not, but I don't tell myself, "You have to work out 6 days a week," because then if I'm not hitting them, I'm gonna get more down on myself than I need to. So I give myself that free range to hit 4 or 5, but just like I'm scheduling everybody else in, I need to schedule myself in as well. Like yesterday was Monday, and Monday I usually will work out as well, but yesterday was just harder to get up. It was raining, it was post the hurricane, everything. And then the sun came out and I immediately was like, I'm going for a run and then I'm going to do like a strength training circuit at my apartment afterwards, and I felt like instantly better. So that's another encouragement as well, what I know I'm going to feel like at the end. And then also just if I'm training my clients and I'm encouraging them to get up, not that I feel like a fake if I'm not doing it myself, but like how am I going to push people if I'm not even pushing
Right.
myself?
Mhm.
So that's a mean one for me too. But like I said, I mean, I definitely hit 4, sometimes 5, but I give myself that leeway as well, but the 4 that I'm hitting, they're in my calendar and they are set and I'm making them.
I love what you highlighted there. And it actually totally resonates with a post I shared recently on Instagram about flexible consistency. And I was listening to a podcast recently and it was about the psychology of change and how you can actually change when you really want to. And one of the points that was made is you have to be careful that your desire for consistency doesn't turn into rigidity, in the sense that you're like, okay, if I have to work out every Monday and it's got to be at 7 a.m., because a lot of the time that can turn into, if you miss that 7 a.m. workout, like exactly what you highlighted, the weather wasn't great, maybe you slept in a little bit later, you are
Hmm.
more likely to just be like, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. Whereas you described your structure and the consistency that you've created by saying, my goal is 4 days a week. I will plug it in as I go throughout the week, but it's also movable. Like there's little Tetris pieces and you're trying to fit them together. And I think that I hate the word balance, but it's so relevant, right? Like it's really important to understand that sometimes our desire for consistency and us talking about habits, habit building, all has to do with showing up and doing it and doing it and doing it regularly. We need to take care that there's not so much strictness around it that we're putting ourselves in these boxes that's actually going to hurt our progress in the long run. And I think that's totally relevant in everything you just described. There was one other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to hit on too, in talking about, I think it was when you were describing like your clients and that motivation there, right? And not wanting to feel like you're being an imposter, right? Like if I'm encouraging them. I think that's something that a lot of coaches can struggle with. And that's honestly why I love asking these types of questions of like, hey, we're not any more motivated than the next person. Like we're designed just like any other human that we don't always want to do this. And the third thing about how you'll feel after the workout. I feel like sometimes people who are not really into a workout routine, whether it's been a long time since they were in one, they've never gotten into one in the first place, I always wonder if they think that's like a lie. Like they don't believe that you're going to feel better after the fact because they've just never experienced it before. So when you said that about like knowing the sun came out yesterday and you knew that if you went for a run, did a little strength training, you were going to feel great afterwards. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's literally science. Like if you work out, your endorphins are going to be up. You're going to feel better. I know. If people aren't in, I think it's just making that first step. They may not know that feeling, but once you do that first feeling, and it could be just like go for a power walk for 10 minutes. If it's your first day not working out in 3 months. Like it does not have to be a long workout, but once you get that like addiction in a sense, then you're just going to keep wanting it and feeling better. And I will say, like back in the day when I had not the greatest outlook on like fitness, and not because I didn't want to work out or anything, but it was like I was getting obsessive with it. I would think I had to work out 2 times a day, I had to work out every single day. And now like the trainer I see has definitely made me more at ease with like, it's okay if you don't work out, eat healthy or clean, however people want to call it, make sure you're hitting your protein. But if I don't work out, sometimes maybe like 4 days in a row, and then I get back to lifting, I sometimes even like lift stronger because my nervous system went down, I'm relaxed, I'm restored, and then I'm getting right back to it. And, as instructors, we're putting a lot of energy into anything, or even if you're just a personal trainer, you're virtually training someone, like you're thinking of their program, you're getting up to motivate them, talk with them, and be on video. It's different now being on video more than like in person and stuff. So yeah, I think also just like you were saying with the article you were reading, changing your mind over time can happen too. Like just because you thought it a year ago and that was your structure, it could be completely different a few months later.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's a really, really important point too. And people get into this mindset of, oh, well, that worked for me before. And it's like, that's great. And maybe it did, but let's look at the rest of your life. What were your circumstances? What did your relationship look like? What kind of responsibilities did you have at work, outside of work? Like all of those variables really do matter and are going to guide how we navigate both our fitness and nutrition. And obviously as a nutrition coach, I do care a huge amount about the other big piece of this, the big rock of nutrition and what we're putting into our bodies. And that's definitely something I wanted to hit on today throughout this conversation. And I know in sharing a little bit about your story, when we first connected, you've really kind of changed your philosophy on how you approach food and have leaned more towards the intuitive eating approach. And I'm really excited to talk about that because I think, unfortunately, with social media, a lot of the information that I see around intuitive eating, for me, feels a little bit toxic. And it's in the sense that like intuitive eating is the answer to everything. And calorie counting is bad. Macros are bad. It makes you obsessive. I come from the party of that's a choice if you are going to take it to that extreme. And it takes working with someone to figure out how to balance that. I recently saw a dietitian post something about how it was like some TikTok or reel, and it was talking about how they used to take their food scale on vacation and track and weigh their spinach. I don't make any of my clients do that. I would never encourage them to take a food scale on vacation. And so for me, I feel like a lot of people, especially women, are getting bombarded with this language that like the only answer to anti-dieting is intuitive eating. And that just feels scary for some people because it's unknown. And from my perspective, it's like, well, if you never really learned how to eat, how do you learn how to intuitively eat? And I think the disconnect is the fact that a lot of these people who are preaching intuitive eating, they spent some time tracking their macros, following some type of diet. They had a structure, so they spent a really long chunk of time. I'm talking years that took them to that obsessive place, sure, but they put in the education and the actual practical piece of applying it that's allowed them to then walk away and be like, okay, I don't need to weigh my food, but I know how to build a plate that has a protein, a carb, and fat. And by the way, from weighing your food all the time, you can look at something and eyeball it and realize if that's like a reasonable amount of protein for you specifically. Obviously, this is my long soapbox and I feel pretty strongly about this, but I'd love to know from somebody who has moved in that direction, like what does that actually look like for you and how do you think about it? I know that you shared that you work with a trainer and it sounds like they're giving you a lot of input on how to think about your nutrition. So I'd love for you to walk us through that, especially as someone who's very active. So your caloric intake is probably a little bit higher than the type of person who has a more sedentary lifestyle with a 9-to-5 desk job, so to speak.
Right. Well, I will say just to start off with, I do agree with you in the sense that those who say they intuitively ate probably have had some process that they've gotten there. But I do think the world of Instagram and TikTok and all this stuff, it's so, and even in the world of fitness, of the equipment people use and what they teach, if someone wants to do that, that's their choice. Let them do that. Like, it's not like bad or good, this or that. Like, you're right. I'm like someone that's going to do a bodybuilder show, they're going to count their macros and do all that. That doesn't mean like
it's wrong or bad.
They will probably admit at time, maybe I didn't have a great association with food, but they wanted to do that competition and they learned from that. Like, I do think if there's so much out there right now that's like, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, but it's like, that's that person's choice. Just let them have that choice. That's what they want to do. Like, fitness is not one size fit all, and nutrition isn't really either. Like, I don't believe in diets. I will never, if my clients say like, oh, I'm going to do a no sugar diet or this or that, I'm like, why? Like, just eat whole foods,
Like, I promise you the sugar thing is not your problem. It's like it's very minute in the grand scheme of everything.
And the whole, like, I'm going to cut out carbs. Why? Like, what? But this is the type of, marketing that's out there, those fast fixes that unless you work with a professional, it's everywhere. So of course you're going to just think that's right. Like, I don't have a nutrition degree, but if my clients ask me questions, I could give them certain advice, but I always advise them like, hey, I know this girl that's a nutritionist. Like, I'll definitely send you her info. But so yeah, with my situation, I ate fairly well and whatever growing up. And then I had a lot of stomach issues, like post college, got all the tests done. Nothing came back, like celiac, all this stuff. Nothing came back positive. So I was like, okay, I don't know what it is. My mom suggested, why don't you just start cutting out dairy? Because that did seem to upset my stomach. Like, I should have just realized that. But then my mom said,
it's okay, inflammatory.
Sure. Yeah. So started doing that, felt way better. And then the person I was dating at the time, he was doing the paleo diet or, paleo lifestyle or whatever. So I started doing that, which is basically no processed food. So a lot of different meat or protein, vegetables, fruit, nuts, trying to think what else, but yeah, nothing processed or in a bag. So that I felt really great on for 6 months. Was probably like the most lean I was ever in terms of like muscle definition and everything. But it just wasn't sustainable. Like, I had a really plan. And at the time I was commuting. So I would get like an omelet in the day, a salad for lunch, and, figure out dinner and whatnot. And that was great. But you really had to have everything planned out. And then I went
Mhm.
out to dinner, I really restricted myself. Thinking of the types of sauces they use. If you're out to dinner with everyone, you're that difficult one, like, okay, well, can I have it without like XYZ and all
Yeah.
that
And
stuff?
people hate being that person.
Yeah. So did it for a while. And that did teach me what my body reacted well and didn't react with well. So then when I started introducing things back in, I was like, okay, this is okay. My body's all good with that, but this is not. Like I couldn't introduce like soy sauce back or any of that. That was something I had a really bad reaction to, and rice and whatever. And then kind of just kept with well eating for a while. And then I started seeing this trainer. His name's Kevin. I see him at Blocks Fitness in Garden City, also on Long Island. And I went back to him just for lifting because I kind of fell off my lifting, I would say, for like 6 months or so. I was doing it on my own, but I
Mhm.
wasn't working with a trainer. But I was like, I need to get back to like structure. Like, I
Structure.
need someone to tell me, like, this is my program. You're doing squats today, deadlifts today, whatever.
Keep track of your weight, all that.
Yeah, exactly. So I went to him and yeah, we started talking about nutrition. I was like, can you guys just tell me like what your program is like? I wasn't too set on the tracking and all because I will also say I've had a bad experience in the past with body dysmorphia and an eating disorder. So I didn't want to get like so in that hole
Mhm.
again of like these are my calories and this is what I could stay. But we discuss the protein I should eat each day, the amount of grams, and then the carbs and the fats. But he was like, just focus on the protein. Like that is your main hitter I want you to get every day. And I went to him, I was like, I eat so much protein. I'm eating chicken all the time, like all this stuff. So I tracked it and I was literally eating half of what I should eat. And I was like, holy crap, didn't expect that. And I'll even use like a protein powder after I work out. So then he started telling me like certain easy fixes, like, throw in 2 hard-boiled eggs, add another scoop of protein another time in your day. And actually just weighing out the amount of protein I have at each meal. I did actually buy a scale. And like you said, now I know by seeing it
Mhm.
how much it is.
You got your
And
reps in just like you do with fitness?
yeah. And once I started hitting that, I definitely felt a difference, and I felt like less bloat specifically on like my lower ab area. Like I always just felt like I don't know, I guess my body was just being nourished in a way it wasn't being nourished.
Mhm.
And because certain days I'm teaching like 4 classes and like you said, I'm walking those 4 classes. I'm talking, I'm getting so high energy. So even though I'm not like quote unquote working out then, I'm still burning calories then as well. Like except for the one day I take a full rest, like I'm fully going every day. So I definitely was under eating as well. And I did kind of get in this mindset a little bit. I know a lot of people are really into intermittent fasting. And I do think if it works for you, again, that is your
Mhm.
decision. Like it's a good time range to kind of, if you're eating the right amount of food during that, to have yourself in a good calorie deficit or calorie intake. But I was getting very into the mindset like it's 9 p.m. I can't eat. But it's like, okay, but you just taught like 5 classes that day and worked out, and you're still probably under eating. So you can eat
Probably
something at
hungry.
9 p.m.
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
and you'll survive. So I feel like that mindset has changed for me as well. Like, and of course, if I taught a class at 7, I'm probably going to eat something at 9. So just like seeing a trainer change my way of lifting, like seeing Kevin, and also he's my trainer now, but he also brought in that nutrition. Like it just changed the way I eat now and think about food. And also I don't deprive myself anymore at all. Like um in the past, me and my girlfriends will do like, wine and cheese night, make a beautiful charcuterie board. Like in the past, I would not eat any of that. And now I'm like, this isn't going to kill me the once in a while that I have it. And if I want to go have a burger and have the bun and cheese on it, like it's fine. So coming to terms with that too took a lot of time, but now I'm completely there and good with it as well.
And that's great to hear. And just even in mentioning the whole like deprivation piece, um, now that it's been some time and you've made these changes and explored what's worked for you, and it also sounds like you were pretty patient with the elimination process of like taking things out but then adding them back in and isolation. And I think that can be hard for people because it can feel very slow, but it is such great information to figure out, as you said, exactly what works for you. I'm curious though, if in making these adjustments, do you still have any of the same digestive issues that you were facing a while ago?
So certain things, like my one big thing I would love to eat a lot, but I can't, is like sushi. That is like, there's
Yeah,
certain
you
things
mentioned the
that
soy
I
sauce and the
know I
rice.
can't have. And like me and my boyfriend will be out to eat, and like I'll eat something that maybe I thought I could have, and I'll instantly be like, if I eat more of this, I'm going to be in pain later. So I do still have some issues, but I stay away from the things that I know instantly are going to bother my stomach. So I think for sure I have like a sensitivity to a lot of stuff, just like most people do.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't have a specific, disease or anything like that. But no, there are certain things. Yeah. Like when I go out to eat, like recently we were at a wedding and there were vegetables, but there was some like type of seasoning on it. And right away I was like, oh no, can't have this one. So like certain things I could tell for sure. But that took time. Like the first few
You're
bites, if
clearly
I'm not
very in
feeling
tune with your
comfortable.
body though.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it took probably like my 7 years of teaching fitness. It's like I've been in this process of learning it. So, in terms of intuitive eating, like we were just on vacation and I got back and my body right away was like, get a Greek salad because that's always my
Get
go-to. I
some
love Greek
veggies.
salads. Yeah. So those are certain things that right away will talk to me. Or if I'm waking up and it's a weekend and I'm like, hey, I want a bagel today, like I'll follow that as well. As long as I don't like the word balance either, but as long as everything's in tune, in harmony, I guess, like, you know,
Yeah.
it's
And
fine though.
I think you said two things that I really want to emphasize. This I can emphasize till I'm blue in the face. You said that this has taken you 7 years. Like,
Yeah.
PSA to everyone out there, especially my clients who expect to see changes in 12 weeks. Like, I
Mhm.
don't work with anybody unless they're willing to commit to me for 6 months minimum. And
Yeah.
yet we're talking here about 7 years. And I would completely attest to my story being very similar in that, like, before I had found something that worked for me, then it didn't. And if I
Mhm.
look back at that entire journey, it's been like a 6 year process of changing my relationship with food, how I look at it, the role that it plays in my life, and then also how I train in accordance with that. And both have to really match, like you were talking about with bodybuilding or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And I think the second piece too is like understanding that with intuitive eating, like your body can tell you that you're craving a vegetable or a salad, like exactly
Mhm.
what you said. If that's something that you haven't had in the mix for several days and maybe you were eating things you don't typically indulge in Monday through Friday or whatever it is, and it's like a few days of vacation, even if it's seemingly quote unquote healthier things, but like you weren't preparing it yourself, that's going to
Mhm.
play a factor into how you might feel when you come back.
Right.
And
Totally.
I'm glad that you described that situation because I think that's what we need to hear more of to really understand. Like, I feel like I had somebody else on my show recently who was talking about both intuitive eating and movement. And one of the things she said is like, I think there's a fear that like you're going to assume that your body just wants you to sit on the couch like every day. And that's not the case. Like, we
Yeah.
are designed to
No.
move.
Right. Yeah, like we are designed to move. You're not going to be sitting all day. And it's crazy how, because I've heard people say it, the intuitive, my body told me this and that. And I literally felt like that when I came back. Like you need veggies. You need to move. So your body knows what it needs and doesn't need.
It does. It for sure does. Well, Diana, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been such a
Mhm.
fun conversation, and I've really
Yes.
enjoyed getting the chance to chat with you. I'd
Me
love to
too.
move into our little lightning round if you're ready to go. So, just fun questions to wrap it up. Let's
Okay.
jump back to fitness, and I want to know if you could only do one movement, like not type of workout, but like a specific exercise for the rest
Okay.
of your life, what would it be?
I'm gonna go with squats.
They're
I just
practical.
think it's, yeah. I mean, working full body, I'm gonna go with squats.
What is your least favorite movement?
Oh
And tell us why.
gosh. I don't know. This is a rough one. Least favorite movement. Um, forward lunges.
I'm not a
That's
lunge
one.
person either.
I
really don't like them.
That took me a while to really think about because it used to be deadlifts, and now my trainer has taught me to like, I love deadlifts now, but that usually would have been like my first thing. But yeah, I don't mind side or reverse, but the forward lunge, it's just like, unless you're really doing it right, the pressure on your knees and your quads, like I get that it's the way we walk in life. So
Sure.
that's why we mix them in. But I just think there's a better way to work those muscles rather than doing it. Like I've been at classes sometimes and I'm like, oh God,
Watching
no.
people, yeah.
Yeah, like doesn't look good. So yeah, I just think that, I don't know, it's just not at the top of my list for me.
Putting the instructor hat back on too and talking about like people's movements and stuff. Couple questions around that. Is there anything like a memory that stands out in your mind as like your biggest instructor fail? Like I feel like sometimes if you really mess something up, it kind of sticks with you and you're like, I'm never going to make that mistake again.
I'm trying, I mean, probably like there's not one particular, but I will say just like so many times with Pure Barre, like I'll just completely go blank as I'm teaching.
That happened to me too. And then you're like, oh shit.
There's so much memorization, and like you get in your head, you're like, shit, they all know I'm making this up. And most of them will because they take every single day, but they don't care. They're like, you know, like recently, actually, I taught Reform, which is a style of class we had that I haven't taught in a long time because now I'm teaching a lot of classic because it changed from COVID, and I taught it. And I start and I'm thinking like there's a slider underneath each foot. So I'm like, okay, everybody stand with your sliders. And I was like, wait, no, it's one slider. Wait, no, it's two. I was like, wait, no, guys, it's one. It's one. And they're like, I'm going to restart. And then like everybody was laughing. And afterwards, like I've been teaching there for, like I said, almost 7 years.
Yeah.
After the clients were like, Dianna, you're human. It's fine. Like, and again, that's 7 years into teaching that I was still questioning myself. But yeah, things like that, that my brain will just go blank for some reason. I think because there's just so much,
and they're just slightly similar. I think it's like the idea of layering the movements on. It's like unless you're leaving that section, like done with seat, moving to abs, like okay, I'm all right. But like if I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, oh gosh, like I might remember the first 8 counts of this thigh, and then what comes next, got no clue.
Yeah, and
that's
was
definitely
like the
happened
beginning
to me.
of the warm up. So I was like, okay, now just change your mind. Like now you better remember the rest of the class. So yeah, that was like a few months ago.
On a more positive note, what is the most rewarding part about being an instructor for you?
I mean, all the reaction or the interaction with the clients, like right away after class, just how they feel, seeing them progress, like even just teaching, the energy, it's so much fun. Like, I don't know. Yeah. And everything with the clients, it's completely why I do it.
Love it. Well, last but not least, most important question, what is your shameless plug? So tell us where we can find you, where we can check out your workouts if we want to participate in them. How can we stay connected? Okay. So on Instagram, I'm Di Falzarano, DIFALZARANO. And then my website is dynamic-fitness.org. And on there, you could either get in touch with me about training, setting up a private class, or I do have a monthly subscription. So every month I release 8 new workouts. Right now, I believe I'm once I release the 8th of September, I believe there will be over 100 workouts. Sweet.
So the first month, is $10. And then after that, it's $30 going forward. So you could do that as well. It's a good way to do a little bit of everything I do, the Pilates, the strength, a little bit of stretching and mobility. And then the studios I teach at, if you're Long Island based, is Pure Barre, Manhasset, Core & Co, Legree, and RBC, and then Core 95 in Long Beach. Amazing. Well, we will be sure to link all of that down in the show notes, so it's super easily accessible for anybody who's interested in learning more about you. To everybody who tuned into this episode, we appreciate you guys. As always, the best way to help the show and spread all of these messages about health and wellness is to share it. If you benefited from it, I promise that somebody else will too. So take a screenshot, throw it up on your Instagram stories, give both of us a tag the podcast at thefix.officialpod, and we'd love to hear from you about some feedback on the show, what you're looking forward to hearing more about, anything that you have questions on. Dianna and I would be happy to connect with you directly. And this has been another fantastic episode of The Fix. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you.